Dear colleagues, my name is Oleksandr Romanovskyi. I am a doctor of pedagogy, professor, head of the Department of Pedagogy and Psychology of Social Systems Management. Today, me and my colleagues, Doctor of Psychology, Professor Nina Pidbutska, and PhD in Psychology, Anastasiia Knysh, will present the results of the research Elomia Chatbot, the effectiveness of artificial intelligence in the fight for mental health. This research was carried out at the Department of Pedagogy and Psychology of Social System Management by a team of expert psychologists under my leadership. The research focuses on an important topic: helping people in situations of depression and anxiety using artificial intelligence tools. The whole world is now going through of difficult period, and we believe that the power of scientific code can overcome any obstacles. Other all, even artificial intelligence is the result of human work, the fusion of technical and psychological code.
Depression and anxiety are the two most common disorders that seriously affect the quality of life people of different age and social group. The prevalence of anxiety and depression problems is evidenced by WHO data, as well as an increasing number of studies on these issues. In recent years, scientists have revised the tools of diagnosis anxiety and depression and ways to prevent and treat them. The influence to anxiety and depression on the quality of life of individual age and social groups. The consequences of depressive and anxiety conditions are particularly painful for people who are going through age-related crisis and experience resistment, their own values and change in self-image. Moreover, hundreds of thousands of people around the world suffer from the so-called precursor and such disorders. Increased levels of situational anxiety, low mood, anhedonia, feeling of loneliness, acute dissatisfaction with interpersonal relationships. People who suffer from these issues rarely seek help from psychotherapists and psychologists. They even tend to hide their emotional problem and struggling from loved ones. Long-term attempts to cope with such experience without outside help often have negative consequences for mental health, which results in the occurrence of the disorders of the anxiety depressive spectrum. People of the described group need additional support, which can be provided by conversational service based on artificial intelligence and psychological techniques. In recent years, more and more psychological service aimed and providing psychological assistance online health occurred. It's BetterHelp, Help Point, Talkspace, UTalk, etc. These services can be divided into two groups. It's the first chatbots which are based on active listening techniques and online psychologists. Each of these groups has its advantages and disadvantages. So the work of chatbot often does not imply an individual approach to the needs of the client and allows you to simply talk. Online psychologists, by contrast, provide expert assistance, but their work is quite expensive, which is an obstacle to the continued use of such a service for a large group of potential clients. Evidences of the shortcoming of the existing models of online psychological assistance led to the creation of Elomia chatbot, in which the developers try to combine the advantages of psychological online service, its cheapness, round-the-clock availability, and individual approach to solving client problems. Elomia is able to identify the main psychological problems of the client and offer him the most suitable support, optional using first aid techniques and cognitive behavioral psychotherapy. Elomia's arsenal includes its exercises for calming, exercises for falling asleep, its grounding technique, its exercises reduce anxiety, its breathing exercises, its exercises to improve self-esteem. So the algorithm determines the user's need for one or another help while communicating with the chatbot and suggests an exercise to ease his emotional state. The main of the study was to test the effectiveness of Elomia chatbot and reduce the tendency to anxiety, depression, and experience negative emotional states. So what about research design? The study consisted of three stages. The first, it was the formation of experimental and control samples. The second is baseline testing, and of course, the third is final testing. The study used psychological research methods. It's the first patient health questionnaire-9 to diagnose a tendency to depression. The second is general anxiety disorder 7 to diagnose a tendency to generalized anxiety disorder. And third is positive and negative affect schedule to diagnose of prevailing or positive or negative emotional effects. So what about samples? The research sample was formed in several steps. It's the first step 412 voluntaries. It's 202 women and 210 men, ages 19 to 23 years old, who identify the tendency to depression, anxiety, and low mood, were selected in student social networks groups in Kharkiv region. Another criterion for including respondents in the testing group was English proficiency at B2 level, it's upper intermediate and high. After preliminary testing, 320 respondents, it was 162 men and 100 58 women who really showed a tendency to anxiety and depression according to testing were selected. As a second step, group of 82 respondents, it was 39 women and 43 men, was randomly selected from 320 respondents. As the third step, the respondents were randomly divided into two groups. Experimental, it was 42 people, and control, it 40 people. And after to check the distribution equality of respondents in group by age and gender, Chi-square test was used.
Analysis with usage of chi-square criterion confirmed the equality of the subject distributions by age and gender. No significant differences in the distributions of such data were found. Among selected participants, there were like 13.4 with tendency to mild, 47.56% with tendency to moderate, 18.29% with tendency to moderate severe, and 20.73% with tendency to severe depression. 18.29% with tendency to moderate, and 81.7% with tendency to severe anxiety. So both criteria for anxiety and depression were met with this sample. The obtained result of the t-test indicates the absence of significant differences in the level of the studied characteristics at the first stage of study. After the completion of baseline testing, the respondents of the experimental group were given automated access to Elomia chatbot for 4 weeks. Respondents were instructed that they can use Elomia as often as they want in any time they need. Thus, each participant in the study had the opportunity to control the amount of communication with Elomia by him or herself. Respondents in the control group were asked to use the Depression Self-Help Guide developed by National Health Services of the United Kingdom to correct negative emotional states. This guide also contains a set of cognitive behavioral techniques that help to deal with non-adaptive thoughts and to reduce anxiety and depression. Respondents were instructed that they can contact the guide in any time they want. So in both groups, both in experimental and control group, respondents have a chance to get some help from guide or from Elomia wherever they need without any control from the experiment. As a result of a survey after 4 weeks of the study, it was revealed that respondents of the experimental groups used a chatbot with different frequencies and intensity. You can see here on the chart that more often people used Elomia 2 times a week, so not too often. And there were even people who use it every day. It's something about 14%. So each person can determine for him or herself how often he or she needs an Elomia. Retesting was performed in study group in 4 weeks after the baseline. To identify changes in the level of anxiety and depression in the study group, the t-test for paired samples was conducted separately in the experimental and control study groups. And you can see results of such testing on this slide. The test showed significant differences in all study indicators. This means that users of Elomia after 4 weeks of its usage noted a significant decrease in the symptoms of anxiety, depression, and negative effects. Moreover, there is an increase in positive effects, which manifests itself in a more calm, balanced state, high self-esteem, confidence in the future. The participants in the experimental group noted that after using Elomia, they became calmer, more self-confident. Many of them noted that they have become less likely to experience aggression towards others, fear, sense of hopelessness. More than 70% of the participants noted that they returned to using the chatbot in moments of increased anxiety, panic attacks, self-doubt, or loneliness. A similar comparison was made in the control group, and it did not detect significant statistical shifts, which indicates the inefficiency of introspection methods in dealing with signs of depression, anxiety, and negative effects compared to using Elomia chatbot. So they actually can have some techniques that are helping, but without some external help, you just can't get out of depression and anxiety. Comparison of the average indicators of depression tendency in the experimental and control groups allows us to evaluate the effect of the work of respondents with Elomia chatbot. So after 4 weeks of using the chatbot, the average indicator of depression tendency moved from the moderate depression zone to the mild depression zone, while in the control group it remains in the same level. The average indicator of anxiety in the experimental group moved from a zone of severe to a zone of moderate anxiety. In the control group, the anxiety rate remained as high as during the baseline testing. These results are associated with the systematic usage of grounding techniques that artificial intelligence offer to anxiety clients. While in a state of anxiety, a person often becomes obsessed with unproductive experience and thoughts that prevent him or her from finding contact with calming reality. Grounding techniques allow a person to return to reality through simple, repetitive actions, drawing, creating shapes with simple objects. Elomia also helps clients to use these techniques on their own in times of anxiety or fear. On this slide, you can see that the tendency to positive effects in the experimental group increased, while in control group, there were a slight decrease in this indicator. The tendency to negative effects in experimental group decreased, while in the control group remained unchanged. So, a regular usage of Elomia contributes to significant reduction in the high tendency to depression, up to 28%, anxiety, up to 31%, and negative effect, up to 15%. This reduction is achieved through the use of conversational therapy with elements of cognitive behavioral techniques. At the same time, usage of such techniques without a conversational element does not lead to significant changes in the emotional state of clients with the indicators time frames. Elomia is a powerful tool for providing first aid to people suffering from anxiety and depression. Its systematic use can reduce the level of negative effects. It is important to know that it cannot act as a full-fledged substitute for psychotherapy or medical treatment for depression. Rather, it reduces the chances of the person using it to experience serious mental illness. So we'd like to underline the fact that Elomia can be only one of the helpful tools in the way of getting better from depression and anxiety, and it cannot be cure for itself. And people who developed Elomia, they have done everything to be sure that people who really need professional help will go to professionals with their problem, and artificial intelligence Elomia actually helps people to understand that they need actual help of professional and to go to professional. Thank you very much for listening our presentation, and I hope you will be well.